For topic 3, we're going to look at converting between the US and the metric system. So we know how to convert within the US system. We know how to convert within the metric system. That means converting metric to metric or separately converting US to US. But what do we do if we need to take a measurement that's in metric and convert it to US or vice versa? Okay. And this is where that formula sheet is really going to come in handy. So just a quick reminder. You will either have in person if you have a face-to-face class, or in Moodle, you'll have a formula sheet. That's if you're online. And it looks like this. Let me switch. All right, so here is our conversion sheet for chapter 9. Okay, so 9.1 is length. It's only got two sections. It's got the English system, so like converting English to English or US to US. And then it's got the section over here converting English to metric. These are the ones we're going to look at now. But then we also have area and volume. So we've got units for English, English and metric, English for capacity. So we got lots and lots and lots for section 9.2. So again, volume and cubic units, volume and capacity and metric, English and metric equivalents for capacity, English for capacity, English and metric equivalent for area, and then square units of measure English system. So there's a whole lot in 9.2. And then 9.3, not too bad. We have units. That's my dog. It's going to happen at some point. She's mad. There's somebody outside. So units of weight, we have the English system, volume and weight and water in the metric system, and then weight, English and metric equivalents. Then we have temperature, okay? So lots and lots and lots of different conversions. I do not under any circumstances expect you to memorize these. This formula sheet will be allowed on your chapter 9 test. You'll also have formulas, or not formulas, but conversions given to you on your final exam, okay? So, with all of that said, we're going to look mostly at what is here highlighted, the English and metric equivalents, okay? So let's go back to our worksheet and then we'll go back and forth as needed, okay? So if I go back to my worksheet, we have here that because we use both the US and the metric systems in the US, it's important to know how to convert from one system to the other. So that's converting within the two metric systems. We do have to go back to the idea of dimensional analysis. That's where we multiply our initial value by one or more unit fractions to convert. Sometimes more than one conversion is necessary. And if that is the case, convert as much as you can within the initial system and then just do one conversion crossing over, okay? So for example, in just a bit, we're going to look at one that is not really length. It's actually measurements of capacity. Oops, that was my big typo. But we have a situation where we have a unit in the US or in the metric system that does not have an immediate conversion to the US system. So we have to convert within the metric system first and then convert over to the US system. So you want to convert as much as you can in your initial system before crossing over, okay? And I'll show you that in the example that has nothing to do with length. Oops, my bad. Okay, so for example 1, it says perform each conversion, include units with each answer, and round to the nearest tenth as needed. So please do know that we are going to round to the nearest tenth as needed. So this is why we cover that 1.2 stuff about rounding, estimation, and then what was it? Place value, rounding, and estimation. All right, so first up we have 75 miles. We want to convert it to kilometers. So let's go over to our conversion sheet. We're looking for length, something between US, miles, metric, kilometers. And we have right here, 1 mile is approximately 1.6 kilometers. So that's what we need to remember. 1 mile is approximately 1.6 kilometers. All right, so 1 mile is approximately 1.6 kilometers. All right, so remember with dimensional analysis, we start with what we're given. We have 75 miles. I like to write it as a single fraction, so I go ahead and write it as something over 1 just so it looks like a fraction all on its own. And then we're going to multiply it by a unit fraction that relates miles and kilometers. In this case, we need the miles to cancel and we need our final unit to be kilometers. So in order to get miles to cancel, that means miles have to be on the denominator of my unit fraction. So I've got 1 mile is approximately 1.6 kilometers. And now you can see the unit miles absolutely cancel, leaving me with a kilometer in the numerator, which is exactly what I want. So I just want to clean up the math a little bit. So this means in my numerator, I have 75 times 1.6 kilometers. And then in my denominator, everything canceled but 1. So 1 times 1 is just 1, which isn't really going to do much for us. But if you have a calculator, make sure you get it out, have it sitting in front of you. We now want to go ahead and figure out what is 75 times 1.6. And I get 120. Now, technically, we get 120 divided by 1, but when I divide by 1, nothing happens. So we just get 120 kilometers. And that's our final answer. So converting between the two systems is really no harder than converting within the US system. I will tell you that most of our conversions, however, are approximations, meaning we're going to have more decimals that we have to deal with, so more rounding. Okay? Now, this is the one where there's a giant typo, okay? But we can still do this. So in some ways, it's sort of like, okay, that we have a massive typo here just to sort of prove that there's going to be a lot of repetition. So if you can convert length, you can convert capacity, you can convert weight, okay? That's the cool thing about conversion. So we learn the method once, and then we can apply it to different types of measurements. So in this case, milliliters, that's ml, and QT is quarts. Those are liquid measures, but we can still do this conversion. So I figure let's just go ahead and do this one, even though it's like out of section. So let's go to our conversion sheet, and we're looking at capacity. Yeah, that's the right one. All right, so we're looking at volume or capacity, okay? So when you're dealing with milliliters, so M with a big L, that's milliliters. And then quarts, that's like kind of similar to liters. That's like what we use to think like, do you have a grandmother that like cans quarts of beans? You can kind of envision what a quart is, but it's generally a liquid measurement. Okay, we need to find some way to convert between milliliters and quarts, but we don't have one. If you look right here, we have quarts and liters, but there's no milliliters to quarts. We do have milliliters to fluid ounces, so we could technically go milliliters to fluid ounces and then fluid ounces to cups, cups to pints, pints to quarts, but that would take a lot. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to keep in mind that 1 quart is 0.95 liters, and I'll show you the process here because we're going to have to do two different conversions. So 1 quart is 0.95 liters. All right. So 1 quart is 0.95 liters. All right. The issue is we're starting with milliliters. So what we want to do is we want to take milliliters, convert them to just plain old liters, and then from liters, we can go directly to quarts. Okay. Now we already know the metric system for length. Okay. Remember the basic unit for length is a meter. Nothing changes. It's the exact same process, except now we're going to have a liter instead of a meter. So we can say kilo, so KL, hecto, deca, a single liter, deci, centi, and milli. So we're starting with milli, and we want to go all the way to liter. That means we need to move 1, 2, 3 times to the left, which basically means we need to divide by 10 3 times. All right. So if I have 12,500 milliliters, I would take my decimal, which I don't see one, so that tells me it's at the end of the number, and I would move it to the left 1, 2, 3 times. So I would get that this equals 12.5 liters. So I can then take 12.5 liters, write it over 1 so it looks like a regular old fraction. And then I need to multiply it by a unit fraction that relates liters and quarts. And I definitely want the liters to cancel, and I want the quarts to remain in the numerator. And remember, we have from our conversion sheet that 1 quart is approximately 0.95 liters. So I get 0.95, 1. And then I just want to clean things up and see what cancels and then multiply or divide at the end. So you can see that liters cancel, quarts are left in the numerator, which is exactly what we want. We want our final unit of measure to be a quart. So my numerator, I get 12.5 times 1, which is just 12.5. My denominator, I get 1 times 0.95, which is just 0.95. And so all I have to do here on my calculator is take 12.5 and divide it by 0.95. And we end up getting kind of a mess. So we get 13.157899474. But our directions said round to the nearest tenth as needed. So remember, the tenths place is 1 digit after the decimal. So we want to round right here. Okay, so that 1 is in the tenths place. Directly to the right of that, we have a 5, which tells me to round up. That means I want to add 1 to my rounding digit, making it a 2, and then we drop everything after that off. So we would say after a lot of converting in a system we haven't looked at yet, or not a system, but in a type of measure we haven't looked at yet, we get 13.2 quarts. So we will talk about quarts when we get to 9.2, but I figure let's just go ahead and do it. It's the same process no matter what. Okay? So in some cases, you will have to do more than one conversion to get your final answer. All right, let's look at feet to centimeters. So we want to go 8 feet and we want to convert that to centimeters. Okay, so let's go to our conversion sheet. We're back to length again, thank goodness. So we want to look back here at English and metric equivalents for feet and centimeters. I notice I have inches and centimeters, I have feet and centimeters, I have yards and meters, and I have miles and kilometers. Luckily, in this case, we do have a conversion that takes us directly from feet to centimeters. But just know if this right here was not given to us, we could still do our conversion. We could take our feet, convert it to inches, and then convert to centimeters if we needed to. Okay, but in this case, we're good to go. We have that 1 foot is 30.48 centimeters. So let's go back to our worksheet. So we know that 1 foot is equal to 30.48 centimeters. So let's start with what we have. We have 8 feet. I'm going to write it as just a regular old fraction, so I'm going to put it over 1. And then I need to multiply it by a unit fraction that relates feet, which we want to cancel, and centimeters, which we want left in our numerator. So feet in the denominator, centimeters in the numerator. All right. My dog is irritated about something. All right, so we know that 1 foot is approximately 30.48 centimeters. Feet cancel, centimeters are left in the numerator, and at the end of the day, I just have to multiply 8 and 30.48. So we get 8 times 30.48 centimeters. We can use a calculator here, so 8 times 30.48. I get 243.84, but remember the directions up here told us round to the nearest tenth. Now, for me, if I say round to the nearest tenth and you gave me 2 decimal places, it's not the end of the world. There might be a teeny tiny point taken off, but I get the gist. However, in your online homework with Pearson, if it says round to the nearest tenth, they really seriously mean round to the nearest tenth, okay? So get in the habit of reading those directions. If we round to the nearest tenth, we're looking at the 8. Directly to the right of that is a 4, which tells me to round down. That means I don't do anything to the 8. I just chop everything after that off. So we would say this is approximately 243.8 centimeters. And that's it. All right. And then finally, our last example, we have 30 meters to inches. Okay, so 30 meters, we want to convert that to inches. Let's go see what we have on our conversion sheet. All right, so we're still looking up here English and metric equivalents for length. So we're looking for, let's see, we have meters and we want to convert that to inches. Unfortunately, there's not a conversion here that takes us directly from meters to inches, but there is a conversion for inches and centimeters. And since meters and centimeters are both in the metric system, I can very easily convert my meters to centimeters and then use this conversion right here that's highlighted to go from centimeters to inches, okay? So let's remember 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. All right, so we get 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters. And what we're really going to do is we're going to take meters and we're going to convert it to centimeters, and then we're going to convert to inches. Okay, so let's go ahead and convert just in the metric system. Okay, so in the metric system, we have kilo, hecto, deca, single meter, deci, centi, milli. All right, so we need to go from meters to centimeters. Okay, so we're going to start here and we need to move to the right 2 times. So we're essentially taking our 30 meters and multiplying it by 10 twice. So that's going to give me, let's do this off to the side. We have 30 meters, but I need to move my decimal twice, which really gives me 3,000 centimeters. So 30 meters equals 3,000 centimeters. And now we can convert using this conversion right here. We can now convert to inches. So let's see, we have 3,000 centimeters. I'm going to write that over 1 just so I have a fraction. I need to multiply by a unit fraction that relates centimeters and inches. I need the centimeters to cancel, so I want centimeters in the denominator of my unit fraction, and I want inches in the numerator. And remember, from our conversion sheet, we have that 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. Okay? So centimeters cancel. We're left with inches in the numerator, which is exactly what we want. We clean up the math a little bit, and we get 3,000 times 1, which is just 3,000, and our unit in the numerator is inches. In the denominator, we get 1 times 2.54, and there's no unit in the denominator, so just 2.54. And then on the calculator, we can divide. So 3,000 divided by 2.54 gives me 1181.1023, blah, 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 blah. But remember, our directions told us to round to the nearest tenth as needed. So this 1 after the decimal is in the tenths place. To the right of that, we have a 0, which tells us to round down. That means we're going to leave the 1 in the tenths place alone, and then everything after that, we're going to chop it off. So we would say our final answer is 1,181.1 inches. So 3 meters is approximately 1,181.1 inches. And sorry for clearing my throat. I have not had to talk in about 3 weeks, so this has been a lot today. So there you have it. That is length. Remember, we started with just converting within the US system, dimensional analysis. We then looked at converting just in the metric system. That's just bouncing your decimal around, so moving your decimal left and right, depending. And then we looked at converting between the US and the metric system, and that's back to dimensional analysis, okay? So in the next section, 9.2, we're going to look at area, so like think land area, and then we're also going to look at volume/capacity, so think more like your liquid measures, all right?